Seehund, with her crew of 2, could cruise almost 500 miles and stay at sea for a week. But Seehund came too late, and the German defeat prevented her from proving to the skeptical Allies that here was a weapon to be reckoned with. In sharp contrast to the successful underwater craft, the motorboat story was extremely disappointing to the enemy. The Italians designed a 20-foot torpedo boat, the MTSM, to attack ships either at sea or in the harbors. The propellers were retractable, so the crew of 2 could ease her over a sagging harbor defense net to attack the shipping inside. 2 Alfa Romeo engines, one on either side of the single torpedo tube, gave her a top speed of 32 knots. The torpedo was fired by aiming the boat directly at the target. And after firing, the boat was turned sharply away from the following torpedo. This was fine theory that seldom worked out in practice, for the ship's gun crews were able to shoot most of the boats out of the water or drive off the attacks before damage was done. The German version of the torpedo boat was the Wendel boat, a lean, streamlined craft with a single non-retractable prop. 2 torpedoes were shot from the stern and so arranged that one was fired on the run-in and the other was fired during the retreat. In addition, her armament boasted 2 rocket launchers, one on either side of the pilot house. Like the other sneak craft, she required comparatively calm seas for operations. Her high speed of 33 knots and the 2 rockets were supposed to disrupt enemy gun crews, giving her a better chance to get within proper torpedo range. The Wendel boat made fine propaganda pictures for the Nazi newsreels, but her performance as an offensive weapon was no more impressive than her Italian counterpart. The explosive boat was a simpler method of delivering a charge to the target. The Italians used it successfully in the last war and continued to experiment during the 1920s and 30s. They developed a hull that planed beautifully and an Alfa Romeo engine that gave speeds up to 30 knots. The combined propeller rudder could be swiveled at will, so that with a trained operator at the wheel, the usual type of torpedo net defense could be hurdled with surprising ease, although in actual operations, the boat was sneaked over the nets as quietly as possible under cover of darkness. In the early years of the war, the Mediterranean was alive with these craft. They swarmed into Malta and Ceuta Bay in mass attacks, but the ease with which they were spotted and their extreme vulnerability to gunfire placed them in the category of nuisance craft rather than effective offensive ones. Nevertheless, because it was a cheap way of delivering a massive 800-pound charge to its target, the Germans copied the Italian explosive boat. Trailer-drawn and usually launched directly from the trailer, the German craft Linse was a much cheaper, mass-produced boat with a Ford V8 type engine, non-retractable prop, and indifferent seaworthiness. In the dying days of the war, the Germans played up Linse to bolster morale at home. Spectacular pictures of this secret weapon and faked shots of the damage it could do were intended by the Goebbels machine to whip the starving Germans into a frenzy of enthusiasm. The driver aimed his boat like a gun, locked his controls on a collision course, and at the last possible moment, jumped. The 800-pound charge, detonating on contact, supposedly did the rest. Near the end of the war, the Nazis formed a new combat unit to man radio-controlled explosive boats. The radio control man in the pilot boat steered the other craft and could regulate the speed. 3 boats made up a combat team: the pilot boat and 2 explosive boats. A pilot drove each explosive boat until an attack was started. Then he jumped overboard, and to quote the Germans, he was nearly always rescued, either before or after the operation. Radio control made little difference. It saved the lives of a few Nazi boatmen, but the guns of the escort ships still blasted the boats out of the water with almost 100% success. Against an alert enemy, the motorboat idea in any form was a dismal failure. Too late for this war, but almost ready for operation, were two new craft, one German and one Italian. This is the German High, an attempt at a super one-man human torpedo. Its increased length doubled its battery capacity, which could be used for increased range, faster speed, or both. But its great length, over 40 feet, made it extraordinarily clumsy and an ever-present potential death trap for the operator. High failed, and the German unconditional surrender stopped further experiments. Directly opposite to the German High was the Italian SSB, which was also caught by the war's ending before she could get into action. Except for the midget submarine, Seehund, she was probably the finest sneak craft to come out of the war. Her two enormous warheads total nearly 900 pounds of high explosive. The crew of two rides inside a cockpit, which protects them from the water pressure and helps streamline the craft. The face masks and breathing gear are the same as on the older two-man torpedo and can be put on even after the men are underwater. SSB is 26 feet long, weighs a little over 2 tons, and has a top speed of 6 knots. Whether turning, diving, or running, the control is positive and rapid. Look at the ease with which the pilot dives and climbs underwater. The SSB is fast and powerful enough to overcome many of the tides and currents that prevented the other two-man and one-man torpedoes from operating successfully. And her cruising range of 45 miles is 3 times as great as that of the older model. Watch the fast, sharp turn to the left as she surfaces. Shipping is attacked in the same manner as with the older two-man torpedo. For operative technique, the whole operation is shown on the surface beside a ship. After coming alongside submerged, and in a real operation, sinking to the bilge keel, the number 2 man gets out of the craft with his clamps and fastens them to the bilge keel. As this is a merchant ship of 6,000 tons, only one warhead is needed to blow a tremendous hole, break her back, and sink her. The clamp holding the first section of the head is loosened. While this is being done, the captain holds his craft in position under the bilge keel in a real operation, alongside the ship in this demonstration. When the head is loose, a twist or two by the man underwater frees it from the craft. As it has only 2 pounds of positive buoyancy, it is easy to pull it under and fasten it to the hull. The number 2 man then climbs back aboard his craft. With the second section of the warhead still in place, the SSB can attack another ship, making it possible for 2 men to sink 2 ships in one operation. This was the array of sneak craft pitted against the Allies, and the Allies learned by hard lessons that the best defense against them was constant vigilance and a full-dress harbor defense. Attacking a harbor, the sneak craft could easily evade the long-range surface search radar or deep-water magnetic loops at the harbor mouth. Even the line of sonobuoys on the surface or hydrophones on the bottom could seldom pick up their weak propeller beats, and then only if the craft were operating at high speed. The long-range heralds set up on either side of the harbor will not detect sneak craft. They are for the full-size submarines and surface vessels. One possible means of detection is the multi-turn loop, which in some cases will record the passage of the midget craft. Another detection possibility is the short pulse herald. This device can ping on a very small object, but requires constant alertness, the most expert of operators, and ideal sound and hydrographic conditions. The surface of this water is swept by supersensitive radar that picks up objects as small as a periscope or a perspex dome or a swimmer's head. Radio in the harbor entrance control post directs the cutters to the attack. Torpedo nets are the last line of fixed defense. The latest and best stopped torpedoes, one-man human torpedoes, midget subs, and with specially rigged surface elements, they stop motorboats. The two-man torpedoes and the swimmers were the only ones who could make their way past the net defenses, using net cutters or slipping through openings near the shore. The harbor patrol boats, armed with searchlights, machine guns, and depth charges, were constantly searching for the sneak attackers who were able to penetrate these defenses. At slow speeds, these underwater craft made little or no noise with their propellers or engines. Sometimes, at a very close range and under the very best of listening conditions, a skillful operator might faintly hear the propeller beats. Of course, if the craft makes a maneuver such as this crash dive of the Seehund, the experienced sound operator could quite easily hear it. However, exhaustive tests have proved that under sneak attack conditions, it is next to impossible to hear any of these midget craft. The electric torpedo is by no means silent. True, the sound operator hears it the instant it is fired, but then it is much too late. The latest detection devices developed at the end of the war, but not yet installed in our harbors, were the multi-turn loop and the short pulse herald. The multi-turn loop in 60 feet of water is the most sensitive of magnetic detection instruments. However, a sneak craft built of non-magnetic material should be able to cross such a loop without detection. The short pulse herald promised to be one of the most effective detection devices in use. Tests revealed that up to 400 yards, this device, with skillful operation, could detect sneak craft under average conditions. These and the radar were the newest weapons for harbor defense. The end of the war found the sneak craft that had been so crudely and hastily built for defense about to become important secret weapons of offense. It needs but little imagination to see what these craft could do to even our largest shore installations, should they be equipped with new atomic weapons. To be secure is to keep well abreast of all future improvements in sneak weapons and to press vigorously the development of more dependable detection equipment and countermeasures so that we may not be caught by this form of the opening gun of modern warfare, the sneak attack.